Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and I've got an awesome new attachment out here on the trailer, and I cannot wait to put this thing to use. First thing we got to do is get it unloaded. Now, I've done a ton of brush cutting videos, and I hope you guys enjoy those because you're about to get a lot more of them. I've finally got the kind of brush cutter that I really need for the types of jobs I want to do. So you guys know that I go to all the big national farm shows and all the local farm shows, and I talk to manufacturers, and then I talk to farmers in my area, and I ask a lot of questions about like what makes a good implement? What are you looking for? And for a while now, you'll have heard me say in videos that there are a few premium brands that make brush cutters for a tractor this size. And I've said a dozen times in my videos that my top picks would be Woods or Rhino or possibly Bush Hog. And I've been talking to Rhino for probably 18 months about partnering with them. And we finally worked out an agreement on this Rhino Ag brush cutter for me to show it here on the channel. I'm not paid by them, but I want to make it clear that I also did not pay for this brush cutter. I did pay for this brush cutter, and I have used the heck out of it. And I've bent it, and I've damaged it, and I've straightened it, and then I've bent it again, and then I've straightened it again. I've got videos of me straightening out this back wall, and that is the most interesting part of the conversation to me. What makes a good brush cutter? Or what determines the rated cut capacity on a brush cutter? Typically for a compact tractor, now we're not talking about 100 horsepower machines. We're talking about compact tractors, which is anything this size or smaller. Most of the brush cutters are rated for 1 inch or 1.5 inches. And anyone who's really got one that they maintain their property with will tell you, yeah, but I don't listen to that. I cut 2-inch and 3-inch and even bigger material with my cutter that's rated for 1.5 inches. And that is true, you can do it. The blades on this brush cutter are heavy enough. They're probably almost as heavy as the blades on this one, even though I haven't compared. The blades are not the limiting factor. The blade speed is not the limiting factor. To cut something with a brush cutter, you have to be able to back over it. So one big limiting factor is how strong is the back of the cutter. And this one you can see, I've straightened it 3 or 4 times, but all of this skirt is pushed in and the blades hit it whenever I start up or shut down. And I've been having a hard time. It's bent so far this time, I'm having a hard time bending it back. So I would say the top 2 factors that determine how thick a material you can cut is the strength of the back area where you're going to be backing over and how heavy duty your gearbox is. So if you look at the size of this gearbox here and then contrast it with the size of this gearbox, huge difference. The next place you're going to see that difference is on the back. Now they've got a chain back. This one, even though I paid what I thought at the time was a lot of money for this, it didn't come with that chain guard. And I believe there's an add-on where you can use those square bolts to add a little outer ring with chains on it. But this, to me, on the back, it's a better design having the chains all the way across, just like both of these cutters have chains on the front. But then what you look at here is how thick the sides of this are, and the fact that they're cut at an angle instead of straight down. This is a thick material. I'm not going to bend this and then be straightening it. It's not going to happen. And we look at the tail wheel on here. They're both the same style of tail wheel, which works just fine. But this one is a single straight bar, and this one has an A-frame support. Another thing that you look for with a brush cutter with premium features is the shape of the top. See how all of your reinforcements are on top of the brush cutter here? What that creates is all these little cavities and pockets, which are places for grass and debris to build up, and you need to clean that off or it's going to rust out a lot faster. You can see I try to clean it most of the time, but over here, this little spot has not been cleaned off. And besides grass building up on there, if your equipment sets outside and it rains, water will pool in these areas. Now you look at a premium brush cutter, you'll notice that the top is a rounded kind of dome. There's no place, water cannot pool on top of this brush cutter. And grass is not going to collect on it as bad. The next thing I want to talk about is this having a 3-inch capacity, and I'm sure it can actually do more than 3 inches, but it's rated for 3 inches. But if you have that much material inside of it, you're cutting big stuff, you're cutting thick and heavy brush, all of that needs room to shred underneath it. So you need a larger cavity. So this brush cutter has a 7-inch high chamber for the material to shred inside of. This cutter has a 13.5-inch high cavity. That is the room inside of here for the cutter to shred the material. Here on the top it says 10-year warranty, 10-year gearbox warranty. Now when I was doing my research, I found a video from a dealer that said 5-year gearbox warranty, but that video is 5 years old. They have a 10-year gearbox warranty. Speaking of how big that gearbox is compared to the one over here, this gearbox is rated for 130 horsepower. So, and you're not going to put a 6-foot cutter probably on a 130 horsepower tractor. But you do not have to worry that your compact tractor, which has, in my case, 45 PTO horsepower, you're never going to damage that gearbox if you do proper service on it and keep oil in it, because it's rated for a tractor 3 times, almost exactly 3 times as big as you're going to put it on. Now this machine does recommend that you have at least 45 horsepower at your PTO to run this brush cutter. Now if you wanted a Rhino Ag brush cutter, but you didn't have 45 PTO horsepower, they've got different models. So this model is TW36. This is like the Twister series. That's just a designation with the letters. But the 3 is a series of basically how heavily built it is. In single spindle cutters, they have 1, 2, and 3 series. The 3 will be the most heavy built and the most expensive. And I believe the 3 also designates how thick the material you can cut is. The 6 designates the width of the cutter in feet. So this is a 6-foot wide cutter cutting 3-inch material. You can also get a 15 or a 26 or a 37, and those are all going to have different horsepower requirements. So if you're interested in a Rhino Ag cutter like this, but your tractor is a little bit smaller than mine, they've got a lot of other options. Next thing I want to point out about this cutter is the bottom. Now I've done a lot of cutting with this and I haven't completely ruined this bottom yet, but when I say a lot of cutting, what we're talking about is I probably cut more per year than the average person who buys this cutter. I've done a 49-acre property. I have 3 or 4 properties that I do for friends twice a year, that those properties are a combined 20 acres. So I would say I've used this a ton and I'm really hard on it. I've went and done property clearing jobs that should have had a forestry mulcher on a skid steer and did it with this little cutter. The one that the video was titled, I should have had a bulldozer for this. I was cutting 4-inch trees with this. And the guy watching, the property owner, he said, man, you're insane for taking that tractor with that cutter through that mess. And I did it. And a lot of you guys have probably done stuff like that. But The difference is I've only had this 4 years and it's mangled and beat up and it's still working, you know, so I have no complaint about it. But what I call a lot of use on this would be what some property owners might do in a year if you own that big property. So it all depends on your use case. But what really, the thing about these attachments is I've had this 4 years. But if you spend your money on a brush cutter for your property, how long do you intend to continue using that brush cutter? For most of us, the answer is not 4 years. We want to be using it the next 30 years and then pass it down and let our kids use it or sell it at the end and have it still be worth something. You're looking to buy these attachments to have them last you 30 years or more. And that's what this one is for. That's why it's built so much heavier. This, eventually, it doesn't have skid shoes. So eventually this bottom here is going to wear out and warp and deform. This has replaceable skid shoes. So if instead of 150 hours I put on this one, you put 10,000 hours on it, you can replace these shoes all the way back and start over on its life expectancy. Another thing is if I go to turn with this and I've got it too low or it's uneven ground, if at any point, if this is riding on the ground and I try to turn, it will dig a rut because the edge of it comes out straight. On this, the edge comes out and then flares up. So it's not going to dig in and bite. I know a great operator wouldn't do something stupid like this, but I've scalped across and cut out the grass turning with this because I had it too low. And you look at our connection points here. Here we have a single pin going through a hole here. The connection points here. This metal is, let's look at what we actually have here. That steel is 3/8 of an inch. This steel is 5/8. So here we have 3/8 inch steel. Here we have 5/8 inch steel, and it's on both sides. Now this comes with pins for category 1 or category 2. And I think it's quick hitch. I know that the website said you can get it quick hitch, that it's compatible with quick hitch, category 1 and category 2, depending on how you set it up. But I won't know for sure until I try hooking this up. So for me to use it on my tractor, which is category 1, I'll be taking the pin out and using it without this sleeve right here. It's got a slip clutch instead of a shear bolt, which is, to me, always preferable. Slip clutches are more expensive, but they're better. The other thing is they can require a little bit of maintenance because if you don't maintenance your slip clutch, it won't slip anymore. So where the Frontier brush cutter had your vertical steel running on top, here we have this heavy tubing that runs underneath that gives all the strength that this dome top needs. Besides just being, you know, made out of thicker material, you've got all this heavy reinforcement. And then Rhino Ag, instead of a regular stump jumper, they use this to do the same thing. There you can see the blades. They call this a dog bone or a wishbone in the middle. And it's much easier to remove. And it's easier to access. If you need to unbolt the gearbox, it's a lot easier to get to. So you can kind of see in here how it's built. With my other cutter, when this got bent in, and I said it's not going to bend on this cutter. On the other one, when this got bent in, the blades hit it. This is an outer layer. Then we have this inner ring here. So there's no chance of this getting shoved in and hitting your blades. Now some of the stuff I'm pointing out here is a difference between this is designed for a little bit bigger tractor. But basically, I would say this is a cutter that's going to last you 10 years of heavy use. And then it's going to be pretty rough shape. You might still be able to use it, but it's not going to be what it was when you bought it. To me, this is a cutter that's going to last you for the next 30 years, 40 years or more if you do the proper maintenance. Now this cutter, I believe, runs about $2,800. This cutter's like $7,000. So it's a case that you get what you pay for, and it depends on how much you're going to use it. But I've looked at all the brush cutters on the market, and if I was buying one today with my own money, Rhino Ag would be on a short list of a few companies that I would want to buy from. So this brush cutter is American made in Illinois, and Rhino Ag makes a lot of attachments, a wide variety of tractor attachments, and I believe they're all made in Illinois. So if you want to see this running, in the next month I'll publish 4 or 5 videos actually out mowing properties. But today is for telling you what I got and how I got it. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. I'll put links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.